children of this castle are all very skilled. Look at this little girl who lifted up the hair on the back of her head and opened her mouth to gobble up a chicken leg. The boy who opens his mouth and a bee flies out. The invisible child who disappears completely without clothes. There are plant girls who control the growth of plants at will. The powerful girl who is born with the power to pull radishes with her bare hands. Crafty children who can revive any toy. There are also twins who can turn people into stone just by looking at them. They have lived here for decades. They have been living here for decades, but always look like children. The story begins with a phone call from Jack's grandfather. Grandpa said someone was after him. He warned Jack to hide, but Jack did not think so. He thought he had forgotten to take his medicine, but when he arrived at home, he only saw a mess in the house. It seems that some kind of monster broke into the place. Tracing the footprints on the floor, Jack found his grandfather lying on the floor. His eyes had been gouged out. Before he died, Grandpa told him to go to an island and find the dean of the castle. The dean will tell him the truth. He is not a stranger to this island, because when he was a child, his grandfather used to tell stories about this place. There is a dean who can turn into a bird. There are children with all kinds of superpowers. His grandfather died after telling him. Just then, Jack saw the figure of a giant monster approaching him. Fortunately, the neighbor appeared in time and managed to scare the monster away. Jack decided to follow his grandfather's instructions. Jack decided to go to the island to look for the castle, but the castle was already in ruins. According to the memories of the locals, back in 1943, the castle had been blown up by the Germans. Unhappy with the situation, so he went to the castle again. In the midst of the ruins, a figure suddenly called out to him. This bizarre scene scared him to run. The result was that he fell unconscious. When he woke up, found himself being carried on the shoulders of a little girl, effortlessly. Immediately after that, he was stunned by the scene in front of him. Grandpa's story of the man actually appeared in front of him. The children then lead Jack through the cave and crossed over to the world of 1943. The castle was now intact and stood in front of Jack's eyes. Miss Pei stood at the door to greet him, just like in his grandfather's photo. Miss Pei is a woman who likes to smoke, drink and perm her hair. Jack travels to a castle in 1943. He finds that the people here all have superpowers. Some can boil water with their bare hands. Some have a big mouth on the back of their heads. But the girl that most attracted Jack's attention was this girl. She has the power to control the air. Her weight is also like air. If not wearing a specific boot will fly away. And Miss Pei is a time bird. Has the superpower to manipulate time. Can create a circle of time and light, repeating the past 24 hours. And now is the day before the castle was blown up. On the night of the bombing, Miss Pei invited Jack to stay and watch her reset time. At night, everyone comes out of the house together. Miss Pei tells all the children to put on their gas masks. At that moment, bombers were flying over their heads. One of them drops a bomb. The whole castle was about to be blown up. Miss Pei pressed the pocket watch in her hand. Everything around them instantly stood still as it rotated counterclockwise. The falling bombs and raindrops slowly rose. Everything around them began to reverse. Then they went back to the day before the castle was blown up. The events of that day, they had been through it a million times before. So familiar that they knew exactly what was going to happen in a few minutes and a few seconds. This is the reason they have not aged. But if you leave the time aperture will rapidly aging and die. Miss Pei told Jack that, in fact, he is also a superpower. Like his grandfather, can see the invisible monster that others cannot see. And invisible monsters used to be superpowers, too, but they want to live forever. So they captured the immortal time bird. Unexpectedly, there was an accident during the experiment. These people have become invisible monsters, only by feeding on the eyes of the superpowered. The only way to become human. This is also the reason why grandfather was gouged out of his eyes. This is a group of monsters that are mutating. Their eyes were white and the whole face was stuck together. All that remains is a bloody mouth. Their fingers twisted and lengthened rapidly, eventually long. Thin tongues emerged. Even the legs began to twist. They eat eyeballs for a living. They are quite brutal. They want to live forever. So they search the world for a time circle. They want to live forever. Soon the invisible monsters will be here. Miss Pei told all the children to pack up and get ready to leave. And Jack had to go too. But on the way back, he meets Mr. Black, the leader of the invisible monsters, who can change his form at will. He then takes Jack hostage. He threatens Miss Pay. Miss Pay had to do as she was told, turned into a time bird and flew into the cage. Mr. Black got what he wanted and left the castle, but the invisible monsters are still lingering around. Jack took the children and hid in the house, blocking the windows and doors, but the monsters came in anyway. No one could see him. A child was accidentally caught. At the critical moment, Jack shot the monster, for everyone to buy the time to escape. The children rushed to escape through the window. At the critical moment, the bomber came over the castle. The monster and the castle were destroyed together. To save Miss Pay, they dragged a sunken ship out of the sea. The girl with the flame in her hand sets the engine on fire. The shipwreck is restarted. Jack uses the map left by his grandfather to find the invisible monster's lair. He finds the place full of invisible monsters. How can we kill the invisible monsters? First, they hit the invisible monster with a snowball, then throw blood and feathers. The monster gradually revealed its outline. Then the craft children revived countless skeleton models in the shipwreck. An army of skeletons was formed. They launched a siege on the monster. After finishing these monsters, Jack and the others were ready to attack the leader of the invisible monster. The children showed their skills, but they couldn't stop Mr. Black. He went towards the place where Miss Pay was being held. Fortunately, Mr. Black was temporarily restrained by Air Girl and cannot move from the wall. Jack took the opportunity to release Miss Pay and several other time cages. Since Air Girl's powers are limited in time, Mr. Black also rushed to the room where Jack was. Just as he tried to kill Jack, his teammates arrived in time, but found that there are two Jack in the room. Although they did make it difficult, but he couldn't see the invisible monster behind him, also by the invisible monster to kill. In this way, a crisis passed because of what happened in 1943, killed the invisible monster gang. So back in the real world, Grandpa is still alive. Jack tells what happened. Grandpa gave him a gift, a map of all the time zones in the world and money for the journey. Encouraged him to go in search of his life. So, Jack ran through the time portals all over the world, finally met up with the girl. Since then, the two lived a happy life.